I think millions of Americans are asking the wrong retirement question. Most people ask, when can I retire? After helping hundreds of people transition to retirement over more than 3 decades, I've learned that that's one of the first questions most everybody asks. But it's not the most important question because retirement doesn't look the same for everyone. Think about three people: an airline pilot, a school teacher, and someone who owns a small business. All three are approaching retirement, but they're not approaching the same retirement. The airline pilot may absolutely love flying. He may still be healthy, sharp, and passionate about what he does. But at age 65, federal law says it's time to retire. Whether he wants to or not, someone else has already made that decision. Now, think about the school teacher. She may have 35 years in the classroom. She has a pension, a 403B, Social Security, and maybe she's had a retirement date circled on the calendar for years. She'll probably have a retirement party, receive a plaque, and begin a retirement that has been planned for decades. Now think about the business owner. Nobody tells him when it's time to retire. There isn't a retirement party waiting. There isn't a pension. He's trying to figure out, how do I turn decades of hard work into retirement income while protecting everything that he's spent a lifetime building? Three people, three very different retirement journeys. So here's my question. If retirement looks different for different people, why do so many people keep looking for one-size-fits-all retirement advice? Welcome back to the Financial Fast Lane. I'm Lane Martinson. If you've been watching this channel for a while, you know that we spend a lot of time talking about Social Security, Roth conversions, taxes, investing, and all things retirement planning. But today, I want to step back and look at retirement from a different perspective, because over the years, it has become very clear that retirement isn't simply a financial event. It's one of life's biggest transitions, right? And depending on the life that you've built, the transition can look completely different. So I've worked with engineers, with doctors, pilots, business owners, executives, real estate investors. Every one of them arrived at retirement with a different set of questions. That's one of the reasons I've never believed in one-size-fits-all retirement planning. People don't live one-size-fits-all lives. They have different careers, different families, different priorities, different dreams, different assets. So why would their retirement blueprint be the same? Today, I want to focus on business owners because I think they illustrate something that applies to all of us. Business owners don't retire like everybody else. By the end of this video, I think you'll understand why. But more importantly, I hope you'll begin asking a better retirement question. Let me introduce you to someone we'll call Joe. Joe owns a local family restaurant. He's been there for more than 35 years. If you've ever been there, he probably knows your name, probably knows your favorite meal. And if you're a regular, he probably knows exactly where you like to sit. People don't just go because the food is good, they go because of Joe. Over the years, he's hired employees, watched young people get their first jobs, sponsored Little League teams, donated gift certificates to school fundraisers, and built relationships throughout the community. But when people think about that restaurant, they think about Joe. Now, here's what's interesting. Most people look at Joe and think he's done well for himself. And they're probably right. His restaurant may be worth several $1,000,000. But here's what most people don't realize. Almost everything Joe owns is tied up in the business that he's spent a lifetime building. His retirement isn't sitting neatly in a 401k. It's inside the restaurant. So when someone casually asks Joe, when are you going to retire? Sounds like a simple question. But for Joe, it isn't. Because that one question immediately turns into 10 more. Can I sell the business? Should I sell the business? How much is it worth? Will someone actually buy it? Should one of my children take it over? What tax implications would there be? Will the sale provide enough income to last the rest of my life? Should I sell it at once or transition out gradually? And then there's questions that almost nobody asks, but many business owners quietly wrestle with. Who am I if I no longer own the business? Joe hasn't simply built a business, he's built an identity. For 35 years, people have introduced him as Joe, the guy who owns the restaurant. His work has become part of who he is. That's why retirement for many business owners isn't just a financial transition. It's an emotional transition. It's an identity transition. It's a purpose transition. And that's something that spreadsheets can never fully measure. The more business owners I've worked with over the years, the more I've realized they aren't just retiring from a job. They're often transitioning from something that they've spent decades creating. That's different. Now, let me introduce you to Mike. Mike owns an electrical contracting company. His company wires residential construction throughout the region. He has about 20 employees. He's built an outstanding reputation. Builders trust him. Employees respect him. Customers recommend him. Let's assume that his company generates around $8 million a year in revenue. Depending on profitability, recurring earnings, customer concentration, debt, and several other factors, his business could be worth several $1,000,000. On paper, Mike looks wealthy, but appearances can be deceiving. Much of Mike's wealth isn't sitting in a stock portfolio. It isn't sitting inside a pension or a retirement account. It's tied up inside the company. Employees often spend 30 or 40 years investing into a 401k. Business owners often spend those same 30 or 40 years investing back into their business. Neither approach is wrong, they're simply different. And because they're different, retirement planning has to be different. For Mike, retirement planning isn't simply about deciding when to stop working. It's about determining how to convert a successful business into a long-term financial security. Can the business be sold? Should it be sold? Should key employees buy it? Should family members take over? Should he keep ownership and hire professional management? How will the sale affect his taxes? How should the proceeds be invested? What happens if he receives a large lump sum all at once? Those aren't questions employees typically ask, but they are everyday retirement questions for business owners. After working with business owners over the years, I've noticed that most of them don't follow one clean, simple retirement path, not even close. And sometimes they follow more than one. So let me walk you through 7 common ways that business owners transition into retirement. The first path is probably the one that most people think about. The business owner sells the business outright. They find a buyer, negotiate a price, sign the documents, receive the proceeds, and walk away. Sounds simple, but in real life, it rarely is. Because selling a business is not like selling stocks. Stocks can be sold within seconds. The business owner has to determine what is the business worth. They have to find a qualified buyer. They have to decide whether the buyer can actually pay. They have to negotiate the terms. They have to deal with taxes. They have to protect employees, customers, and sometimes their family name. And then after the sale is complete, they have to answer a brand new question. What do I do now? For some business owners, selling outright is the dream. They're ready. They're tired. They've carried the stress long enough. They want freedom, liquidity, and a clean break. But others, selling outright can feel like losing part of themselves because the business wasn't just an asset. It was their life's work. The second path is a gradual sell. Instead of selling everything at once, the owner transitions out slowly. Maybe a key employee buys it over several years. Maybe a child takes over little by little. Maybe the owner sells part of the company now and the rest later. This can be a great option because it gives the owner time to adjust. It gives the buyer time to learn. It gives employees and customers time to build confidence in the next generation of leadership. But it also creates risk. What if the buyer can't follow through? What if the business declines during the transition? What if a family conflict develops? What if the owner stays involved too long and never really lets go? A gradual sell can work beautifully, but it requires planning, structure, trust, and very clear expectations. The third path is transferring the business to family. This is the dream for many business owners. They imagine one of their children taking over the company, continuing the family legacy, keeping the name alive. And when it works, it can be wonderful. But this path can also be complicated because family and business do not always mix easily, right? One child may want the business, another may not. One child may work in the business, another may live across the country. One child may be capable of running it, another may feel entitled to it. Now the business owner is not just making a retirement decision. They're making a family decision. So how do you treat children fairly when one of them is taking over the business? Should the business be gifted? Should it be sold? Should life insurance be used to equalize the inheritance? Should the owner keep income from the business? What happens if the child taking over runs the company into the ground? These are not easy questions, but they are exactly the kind of questions business owners have to think through. Retirement planning and estate planning are always connected. The fourth path is keeping ownership, but hiring professional management. This is where the business owner says, I don't want to run the company anymore, but I don't necessarily want to sell it either. So they keep ownership and bring in a general manager, a president, or leadership team to run the day-to-day operations. This can create ongoing income in retirement. It can preserve the value of the business. It can give the owner flexibility. But it also comes with a very important question. Can the business truly operate without the owner? Because many small businesses are built around the owner, right? The owner knows the customers and the employees. The owner solves the problems and makes the decisions. So before the path works, the owner has to build systems, leadership, accountability, and processes that allow the business to function without them. And that takes time. And it needs to be well established years before retirement. The fifth path is turning the business into a lifestyle business. This happens when the owner doesn't fully retire. They just want to slow down. Maybe they stop working 5 or 6 days a week and work 2 or 3 instead. Maybe they keep their favorite clients and let the rest go. Maybe they stop growing and simply maintain. Maybe they reduce staff, simplify operations, and keep the part of the business that they still enjoy. For some people, this is ideal. They don't want to sit on the sidelines. They don't want to play golf every day. They don't want to disappear from the community. They just want less stress and more control over their time. This can be a very healthy form of retirement, but it only works if the business can support that lifestyle without becoming a burden. Because there is a big difference between working because you want to and working because the business still owns you. The sixth path is one that people don't talk about as often. Sometimes the business is simply shut down. Not every business can be sold. Not every business has transferable value. Some businesses depend almost entirely on the owner's personal relationships, skill, reputation, or daily involvement. When the owner leaves, the value leaves with them. That doesn't mean that the business was a failure. It may have provided a wonderful income for decades. It may have supported a family and employed people. It may have served the community, but it may not be something that a buyer is willing to purchase. This is why business owners need to understand the difference between income value and enterprise value. A business can provide excellent income and still have limited sell value. It's a very important distinction, and it's one that business owners should understand long before they plan to retire. The seventh path may be the most interesting. Some business owners simply don't retire. They may slow down, they may delegate, they may travel more, they may take longer weekends, but they never completely stop. Why? Because they love it. They love building. They love solving problems. They love mentoring young employees. They love relationships with customers. They love being useful and having a reason to get up in the morning. And there's really nothing wrong with that. Retirement does not have to mean stopping everything, right? For some people, retirement means stepping away completely. For others, it means continuing to work, but on their terms. The key difference is choice. Are you working because you have to, or are you working because you want to? And that is a very different kind of retirement. So when someone asks a business owner, when are you going to retire? That may sound like a simple question, but for many business owners, the better question is not, when will you retire? The better question is, what kind of transition do you want? Do you want to sell? Do you want to transfer? Do you want to keep ownership? Do you want to slow down? Do you want to create income? Do you want to preserve legacy? Do you want to protect employees? Do you want to stay involved? Or do you want a clean break? Do you want freedom? Those are deeper questions, and they require deeper planning. Because business owners are not simply trying to retire from a job. They're trying to transition from something that they've built. And that is why their retirement planning has to be different. You know, the more I think about this, the more convinced I become that this really isn't a story about business owners. It's a story about retirement because business owners simply make something obvious that applies to all of us. Every retirement is different, and your retirement will look different too. And that's why I've never believed in one-size-fits-all retirement planning, because people don't live one-size-fits-all lives. Different careers, different families, different values, different dreams, different assets, different health, different priorities. So how could their retirement blueprint possibly be the same? One person I've long admired is S. Truett Cathy, the founder of Chick-fil-A. Financially, he could have retired many years before he passed away. But he kept working, he kept building, he kept mentoring, he kept serving, not because he needed another paycheck, but because he had another purpose. I think there's a valuable lesson in that. Retirement isn't simply about having enough money. It's about having enough freedom to choose how you'll spend the next chapter of your life. Think about it. If retirement were only about money, why do so many financially successful people continue working? Not because they need more money, but because they love what they do. They enjoy creating, mentoring, serving, and making a difference. They have a passion and a purpose. That's something that money can never replace. Money really isn't the goal. Freedom is the goal. Freedom to spend more time with your spouse, freedom to be present for your grandchildren, freedom to travel, freedom to volunteer or mentor, freedom to start another business if you choose, freedom to continue working because you want to, not because you have to. I think we've made a mistake when we've defined retirement as simply the day you stop working. I think retirement is gaining the freedom to decide how you'll spend your time, who you'll spend it with, and how you'll continue contributing. That's why some people stop working completely. Others work part-time, others volunteer, others mentor, others begin entirely new careers. None of those are wrong. They're simply different. That's one of the reasons I wrote the 5W Retirement Blueprint. After helping hundreds of people over the years prepare for retirement, I realized something. Great retirement planning isn't about finding someone else's formula. It's about building a blueprint around your life, because your retirement story is unlike anyone else's. Now, I started this video by saying, I think we've been asking the wrong retirement question. Most people ask, when can I retire? It's an important question, but maybe the better question is, what kind of life do I want the freedom to live? Because the answer to that question will be different for the airline pilot, the school teacher, the small business owner, and maybe for you. Every retirement has a story. Every story deserves its own blueprint. If today's conversation caused you to think about retirement a little differently, I'd love to have you join us here on the Financial Fast Lane. Every week we talk about retirement, taxes, Social Security, investing, but more importantly, we explore the questions that lead to better financial decisions. And in this video here, I explain how the rules change completely the moment you stop getting a paycheck.